The cafeteria smelled faintly of fried food and strong tea. The place was always crowded at lunchtime, but in the far corner, where the light from the dusty window spilled in, sat a man and a little girl. The man's name was Armin, and though his shirt was faded and his hands were calloused, he sat tall with a quiet dignity. Across from him, his daughter Noor swung her small legs beneath the chair, smiling as she bit into a piece of bread that was too dry for most children to enjoy. Armin watched her with a tired but proud smile, pushing his own portion closer to her plate. Noor noticed and quickly shook her head, tearing the bread in half and offering it to her father. You eat too, Baba, she whispered. Armin's throat tightened, but he accepted, because denying her would only hurt her feelings. Around them, people laughed, joked, and scrolled through their expensive phones, but to Noor, that table was the only world that mattered. To Armin, too, it was everything. Across the room, another man entered. The doors seemed to hush as soon as he stepped in. His sharp suit fit like it had been tailored by the hands of perfection itself. His shoes were polished enough to catch the light. His face was recognizable, the face people had seen in magazines, business articles, and interviews. Zion Malik, the millionaire CEO known for building an empire from brilliance and hard decisions, was walking in with his assistants. People at nearby tables whispered his name with awe. Yet his eyes did not linger on the menu or the staff rushing to serve him. Instead, his gaze shifted almost immediately to the corner table where Armin and Noor sat. Zion could not explain it at first. He had been in thousands of meetings, met countless people, yet something about that man, sitting with his daughter in a simple moment of love, pulled him in. He watched the way the father carefully wiped crumbs from his daughter's cheek, the way he laughed softly at her little jokes, the way he gave up his own food so she could eat more. The scene pierced through the shell of steel and glass Zion had built around his heart. When Noor offered her last bite of bread to her father, Zion felt something shift inside him. That kind of sacrifice, that kind of love, was something he had never experienced in his life of wealth and luxury. His assistants continued talking, but he was no longer listening. He was staring at them as though they were a story written just for him. Finally, he stood. His team tried to stop him, whispering about his schedule, but he ignored them. Every step he took toward that corner table seemed to silence the cafeteria even more. Customers turned their heads, whispering, shocked at the sight of the CEO moving toward someone who clearly didn't belong in his world. Armin noticed too. His body stiffened as the tall, polished man approached. For a brief moment, Armin wondered if he had taken the wrong seat or somehow broken a rule. Noor's little eyes widened, her lips parting in awe as she recognized the famous man from a billboard they had once passed on the street. Zion stopped at their table, his presence commanding but his expression soft. Excuse me, he said gently, his voice cutting through the tension in the air. Armin looked up slowly, his protective instincts flaring as he placed a hand near Noor. Yes, he asked, his tone guarded. Zion smiled faintly, not the sharp smile he gave in interviews, but something warmer, almost vulnerable. I couldn't help but notice how much love you show your daughter, he said softly. It's rare, and beautiful. Would you mind if I sat with you for a moment? The cafeteria fell into stunned silence. People craned their necks, trying to listen. A CEO asking to sit with a poor mechanic. It was unthinkable. Armin's frown deepened, suspicion coloring his features. His life had been filled with struggles and disappointments. People with power rarely noticed him, and if they did, it was never for kindness. He pulled Noor closer and said cautiously, "Are you joking with me? Please don't joke with me in front of my daughter." The words cut into Zion's heart. He saw the pain behind them, the years of being overlooked, the fear of being mocked. His voice steadied, his eyes never leaving Armin's. I would never joke about something this important, he replied firmly. I admire you. Noor blinked, looking between them, her small hand tightening around her father's sleeve. The people around the cafeteria held their breath, waiting. Armin's heart pounded in his chest. He had spent years enduring humiliation quietly, shielding his daughter from every cruelty life had thrown at them. And here was the richest man in the city, standing at his table, saying words that sounded almost impossible to believe. For a long moment, the two men just looked at each other, one rich beyond imagination but lonely, the other poor in wealth but rich in love. Noor's innocent eyes sparkled as though sensing that something extraordinary was about to begin. And in that fragile moment, neither of them knew that their lives were about to change forever. Days passed after that unforgettable meeting in the cafeteria, yet the memory stayed with Armin like a shadow he couldn't shake. He replayed the moment in his mind. The millionaire CEO standing at his table, speaking to him with sincerity. It felt almost unreal, like a scene from someone else's life. He tried to convince himself it was a one-time encounter, but fate had other plans. Zion began appearing more often. Sometimes Armin noticed him passing by the mechanic shop where he worked. Other times, Zion would stop casually, pretending to have a car issue, though the gleaming luxury vehicles he brought in clearly didn't need repairs. At first, Armin thought it was coincidence. Later, he realized it was deliberate. The CEO wanted to see him. Noor grew fond of Zion quickly. Each time he came, she greeted him with laughter, showing him her little drawings, telling him about school. Zion, who had lived in a world of contracts and boardrooms, found himself captivated by the innocence of a child who had no idea about his wealth. For the first time in years, someone treated him like a friend, not a powerful figure. Armin, however, remained cautious. He struggled to understand why a man with everything would bother with someone like him. One evening, Zion invited them to dinner at a fine restaurant. Armin resisted, worried about looking out of place, but Noor's eyes shone with excitement, and he couldn't refuse her. As they entered, chandeliers sparkled overhead, golden light bathing the hall. Waiters in pressed uniforms bowed politely. Armin felt his heart race, his worn-out clothes feeling like a stain in the glamorous space. Noor, however, twirled happily, admiring the beautiful place. She whispered, "Baba, this is like a palace." Armin smiled faintly, though unease tightened his chest. When the menu arrived, Armin's hands shook. The prices leapt out at him, numbers he could barely imagine spending in a week, let alone on one meal. He whispered, "Mr. Zion, I can't afford this, we don't belong here." His face burned with shame. But Zion leaned forward, placing his hand on the table, his eyes steady. "Armin, I didn't bring you here to embarrass you," he said softly. "I brought you here because I want to share what I have. With you. With Noor." The words hit Armin like a storm. He shook his head in disbelief, whispering again, almost like a plea, "Please don't joke with me," his voice cracked as if carrying years of wounds. Zion didn't flinch. His expression was filled with something deeper than pity, it was longing, honesty. "I am not joking," he replied firmly. "I want you in my life. Both of you." The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Armin stared at him, his chest heavy with emotions he couldn't name. Could it be real? Could someone who had wealth, power, and endless choices truly want a man like him, a man with nothing but scars and a daughter to care for? Noor, innocent and unaware of the storm inside her father, clapped her hands joyfully. "Does that mean we can see you every day, Uncle Zion?" she asked. Zion's lips curved into the softest smile. "Yes, Noor, every single day, if you'd like." Tears filled Armin's eyes, unbidden. He had spent years burying his emotions, forcing himself to be strong for his daughter, but in that moment, the walls began to crumble. For the first time in so long, he felt the weight of his loneliness lift. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't worthless. Someone saw him. As the evening continued, laughter filled their table. Noor's giggles echoed through the hall, while Armin's guarded heart began to relax. Zion listened to every word, not as a businessman, but as someone starved for real connection. Rumors soon began to spread. The story of the millionaire CEO choosing to spend time with a poor mechanic and his daughter reached the city's ears. Some mocked, some doubted, but others whispered in awe. People couldn't understand. Why him? Why them? But Zion didn't care. His heart had already chosen. One night, after walking Armin and Noor home, Zion paused outside their small, modest apartment. The peeling paint, the cracked door, the dim hallway, it was a world so far from his own. Yet, standing there, he felt more at peace than in his mansion of glass and steel. "Armin," he said quietly, before leaving. "You've given Noor love, you've given her happiness, and you've done it all alone. That kind of strength is richer than any fortune. I don't want to stand on the outside anymore. I want to be a part of it." Armin's eyes stung as he whispered, "You don't know what you're saying. My world is small. Your world is different." Zion shook his head. "Maybe your world is what mine has been missing all along." In that moment, under the pale streetlight, Armin realized the truth. Wealth could buy comfort, but it could never buy love. Yet here was a man willing to trade his comfort for love. And for the first time in years, Armin let himself believe. Maybe this wasn't a joke. Maybe it was destiny. Sometimes the richest hearts belong to those who have suffered the most, And sometimes, love chooses the most unlikely people.